What's up, beautiful people? Today we're going to be checking out Cory Mills questions DEI Chief at State. So without wasting your time, it's going to be a fun one. The title says, if a group of males identify as a woman of color, ... Makes me curious. Let's get to it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ambassador. Do you feel that in the role that you're in right now, do you support self-identification?
Yes, I do.
And in understanding that, if you were to have a group of males of Caucasian or any skin color who identified as a woman of color, would you describe that room as being a diverse room?
I can't even wrap my mind around that. I don't have an answer for that.
But that is actually what your department is about, is understanding diversity and equity and inclusion, correct?
Yes.
So, again, I ask my question. You believe in self-identification. If a group of males, Caucasian or any skin color, identifies as a woman of color, do you see that as a diverse room?
I do not believe that they would have to identify as a woman of color for it to be a diverse room. They
I
could have
absolutely agree with that.
Visible disability. Yes.
So then to go follow up on that, is diversity defined by race and gender or by experience and ideology?
It's defined by many things. The executive order is a much broader definition than simply the classes that are protected under U.S. law.
So people always say many things. They never list the things. And I know why they say many things, because they want to leave it open-ended so more things can come in, which is wrong. If you make a law like that, or even a bill or regulation like that, let's not even go as far as saying a law, but if you make a regulation like that, how can you control it when you leave it open-ended?
So we would start with the law, but it is much broader than that.
You see, you said that the Foreign Service Officers Test, one of the things that our process does not do is test for racist or sexist or homophobes or ableist. Those are the things that we need to be screening for. But let me be clear. I agree there shouldn't be any hateful people in the ranks of our State Department, our diplomatic services, or in government as a whole.
True.
I would strive to say that our endeavor would be to not have that anywhere in America.
Yeah.
But what I would say, however, and critically, is I think I speak for many Americans who have a good reason to believe that the State Department has a deeply misguided belief that hate is labeled and applied to anyone who has a disagreement in their ideology or the political affiliations.
That's true.
And see, just to be clear on that point, the differences in opinion or belief is not
Hate.
racist or sexist or ableist or any other type of labeling. And what you see is that when an individual disagrees, whether it be on his political opinions or things like this, he's immediately labeled based on his skin color that he is to have, as my colleague was pointing out, white privilege, right? And that is the immediate assumption. So I want to know, because you've talked about the fact that, and this is your quote, that we hire based on merit. If it's hired on merit, then why would we even need an office to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion if we're hiring by those who are most qualified?
The issue is access and inclusion, and
So not merit.
But access is granted by merit, correct?
access.
You submit your application, and if you're the
no.
most qualified, then
No, sir.
you should have it basically. But that's what we're looking towards, right? The idea of merit.
This question is kind of like, I feel like she's not answering the right way. There's a lot wrong with that answer, because you're saying access. Access should be granted by merit, which means the best person gets the job. And if it's not that way, then what are the procedures for getting access? Diversity, in this case, whatever you identify as. Crazy.
Merit being the defining factor.
When I say access, for instance, one of the things that Congress has helped us do is pay our interns. I could not afford to be an intern at the Department of State. I come from Ohio. I had to work. So access.
And I completely get that as well, ma'am.
Okay,
I came
so
from a
let's
broken
talk-
family who,
Okay.
my mother and father, my dad spent 30 years in prison. My mom spent 7 years in prison. I bounced house to house until I was raised and finally adopted by grandparents after sleeping on couches of house neighbors and things like this. And he was a welder. My grandmother did hair as a beautician. We came from a below the average line
Okay.
of economics, which guess what? I sit here as a United States congressman, of which 11,500 on average is done in our entire history, not based on diversity, equity, inclusion, but on the ideas that equal opportunity exists thanks to America and the things that we fight for. I want to ask, what is the definition and difference between equity and equality?
There are many wonderful examples of how to describe the difference between the two. Equality is that you each are in a place and you get a ball with the target ahead of you. Equity is if you are smaller, weaker, you might be placed closer to the target.
See, I can answer that really quickly. My opinion of the difference between equity and equality is about equal outcome, and equality is about equal opportunity. And that the bottom line is that I would love to find out in my last few seconds how DEIA helps us win strategic competition when it comes to China, or push back on Russia's illegal war in Ukraine, or prevents nuclear Iran. You know, can you name one meaningful contribution that DEI efforts would make towards those priorities? And with that, I'll yield back to you, Mr. Chair.
May I answer? Or?
Yes, ma'am, you may.
Oh, okay, all right. To have a wider array of experiences at the table as we grapple with these problems is going to help us come up with a wider array of options to address them. If you have the same people sitting at the table with similar backgrounds, similar experiences, you are going to have a very narrow range of options. That is why we're trying to broaden the aperture in that fashion. That is our belief. And as I said, I think this rich discussion today makes my point very, very well. Thank you.
Chair now recognize.
Okay, yeah, that was a good conversation. Started with if a group of males identify as a woman of color. Now, listen to the question. It wasn't if a group of males identify as women of color. It says, if a group of males identify as a woman of color, would you find that place to be a diverse room? Let me know what you guys think about that question. But it was an interesting question. But my take on that interview would be that woman is I think I'm not mincing words, but I think she's a person with a lot of love and just believes in accepting everybody. But there's a very fine line between accepting everything or everybody. You can't just accept everything like that, especially when you're in a position of power or a position of authority. Because one of the major things you have to acknowledge or know when you're in authority is knowing when to stop, basically. Because people are going to keep giving you, people are going to keep giving you things. And since you accept one, they give you two. You accept two, they give you three. So you have to know when to stop and, put your borders and your boundaries. So I feel like establishing boundaries might have been something that was missing in her responses. I didn't hear where she consciously established boundaries. It was more like, oh, this person is welcome. I mean, she didn't say it in those words, but that's what I was hearing. It's like, we must accommodate this access, like it was more like too accommodating and too accepting. And if everybody were to go that route, it's going to be very difficult to regulate society. But yeah, let me know what you think. Those are just my thoughts. I'm not saying she's that person or the man was asking very good questions. I'm just sharing my thoughts after seeing this interview the first time. So don't take my word for this. I'm just speculating. It's just an opinion. Feel free to share yours in the comment section. That being said, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I'll see you on the next video. Have a wonderful day. Peace.